All right, so we're back and ready to dive deep this time into a world where ancient mysteries and modern skepticism collide. We're going to be breaking down this really interesting conversation between Joe Rogan and Dan Richards from the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Richards is like this electrician by trade, but he's got this deep passion for ancient civilizations and alternative theories, and he makes some pretty wild claims. So our mission today is to kind of like sift through those claims, weigh the evidence, see where it all leads us.
Yeah, it's a journey that I think requires a delicate balance. We need to be open to the possibility of the extraordinary, but also, grounded in a healthy dose of skepticism.
For sure. So let's jump right in. With one of the biggest mysteries out there, the Ark of the Covenant. Now, some people believe it's not just a biblical tale, but an actual artifact, hidden away in a church in Ethiopia, guarded by priests who, they suffer from radiation poisoning. Rogan even points out, with all the technology we have today, like satellite scans and stuff, shouldn't we be able to detect that radiation? Especially since there was even talk about using drones to search for a missing nuclear warhead in New Jersey, using similar technology.
It's an interesting point. But so far, there's no scientific evidence to support the idea of the Ark emitting radiation. It's a good reminder to be cautious about these sensational claims, especially online, where misinformation can spread like wildfire.
Totally. Makes sense. Evidence is key. Always a good idea to double-check those sources. Now, speaking of ancient wonders, let's travel to Egypt and tackle the pyramids. Specifically, the Great Pyramid.
Oh yeah, the pyramids. They are truly awe-inspiring. Their sheer scale and precision continues to baffle us even today. Even the construction timeline is up for debate. Some suggest it was built in a super short period, like 20 years.
20 years? That seems almost impossible given the massive scale of that project. Richard suggests a more plausible timeline, over 100 years. Maybe a multi-generational project.
100 years is still a massive feat of engineering and coordination, especially considering they didn't have the tools and technology we have today. It begs the question, did they have access to some kind of lost technology? Or were they just incredibly skilled and resourceful?
Right. Richards acknowledges the lost technology theory, but he stresses the importance of, exhausting all the mundane explanations first before jumping to the extraordinary. It's like Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is usually the best. Now let's shift gears from the deserts of Egypt to the frozen landscapes of Alaska, where a discovery called the Boneyard really throws a wrench into conventional thinking.
The Boneyard, okay. What is that?
So it's this site, packed with the bones of extinct animals, discovered by John Reeves. And get this, some of those species aren't even thought to have lived in that region. And on top of that, there's evidence of a massive fire and a potential flood at the site, pointing to some kind of catastrophic event.
That reminds me of the Younger Dryas impact theory. The one that suggests a comet or asteroid hit Earth around 12,000 years ago, causing widespread destruction and climate change. The Boneyard could potentially support that theory. But of course, like any scientific theory, it needs thorough investigation and solid evidence.
Definitely. It just goes to show you how seemingly isolated discoveries can actually connect to these larger scientific debates. And speaking of challenging established narratives, we got to talk about Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. This discovery has really shaken things up in the archaeological world. We're talking complex, intricately carved pillars dating back to 10,000 BC, much older than what we previously thought humans were capable of.
Göbekli Tepe forces us to reconsider our whole understanding of early human capabilities and the timeline of civilization as we know it. If they could build something this complex back then, what else might they have achieved?
That's the million-dollar question. It makes you wonder what other secrets are out there just waiting to be uncovered. But while it's tempting to get swept up in all these possibilities, we also have to remember something called pareidolia.
Pareidolia?
Yeah. It's our tendency to see patterns in familiar shapes where they don't actually exist.
Right. Our brains are wired to find patterns.
Yeah.
Even when they're not really there.
A classic example is the face on Mars. You know that photograph from 1976? That looked like a face carved into the Martian surface. It sparked all sorts of speculation about ancient Martian civilizations, but higher resolution images revealed it was just a natural mesa, a trick of light and shadow.
The face on Mars is a good reminder to verify those initial impressions with further investigation and not jump to conclusions based on limited data.
But hold on. There's a new twist in this Martian saga. Recently, another image from Mars emerged. This one shows a square-shaped feature, and guess what? It's located near the original face.
Now that is interesting. While it could just be another natural formation, Its proximity to the face is definitely intriguing. It's like
Yeah.
even debunks mysteries, can reignite with new evidence, reminding us to keep an open mind.
Exactly. It's easy to dismiss these things as tricks of the eye, but we should at least be open to the possibility that they might point to something genuinely extraordinary. Richards, known for his balanced approach, acknowledges the intrigue of the Mars Square, but emphasizes the need for further investigation before drawing any conclusions.
Of course, extraordinary claims, especially those that challenge our understanding of the universe, require extraordinary evidence.
Right. Now, Richards also brings up an interesting observation about the scientific community itself. He points out that scientists, while brilliant, can sometimes be socially awkward. Maybe because, as Chris Williamson suggests, extraordinary results often require weird individuals.
Interesting thought. Maybe a certain level of unconventionality, a willingness to think outside the box, is necessary to challenge those established paradigms and make groundbreaking discoveries.
But that can also lead to tension between those who uphold the established knowledge and those who challenge it. Sometimes the desire to protect one's reputation or defend a particular theory can actually hinder the pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. The history of science is filled with examples of individuals who faced ridicule or even persecution for daring to challenge the prevailing ideas of their time.
Like the Clovis first theory. For decades, that was the dominant explanation for the peopling of the Americas, stating that the Clovis people were the first to arrive around 13,000 years ago. But then archaeologist Tom Dillahay made some groundbreaking discoveries at Monteverde in Chile. That pushed back that timeline by thousands of years, and he faced major resistance, even threats.
The Clovis first example really highlights how deeply ingrained beliefs, even in the scientific community, can be incredibly difficult to overturn. It shows the importance of open-mindedness and a willingness to reevaluate our understanding of the past in light of new evidence. It's about separating our egos from the pursuit of truth.
Totally. And unfortunately, this tendency to dismiss evidence that contradicts established theories isn't limited to the Clovis first debate. Sites like the Yonaguni Monument in Japan, that underwater structure some believe is man-made, and the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, that formation of large stones that some consider to be a submerged road or wall, have also been met with skepticism from mainstream science.
It makes you wonder, are we truly open to paradigm-shifting discoveries? Or are we just clinging to comfortable narratives, even when evidence suggests otherwise? Maybe a more open-minded and investigative approach is needed, especially when dealing with evidence that challenges our current understanding.
Now let's turn our attention to another intriguing mystery, the handbag symbol, found in ancient art and architecture across various cultures, including at Göbekli Tepe.
The handbag symbol, this is new to me.
Yeah, it's this recurring motif. That sparked a lot of debate. Richards believes it represents more than just a simple object. He suggests it signifies a deeper understanding, particularly in astronomy and timekeeping.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the connection to ancient civilizations?
Well, he proposes that this knowledge of astronomy and timekeeping might have been connected to advanced seafaring and building techniques. Imagine a civilization that understood the stars, the seasons, the movement of the heavens. They could navigate vast distances, predict eclipses, and maybe even use their knowledge to construct those monumental structures.
That's a captivating thought. If this interpretation is right, it really challenges our perception of ancient capabilities, hints at a level of sophistication we often overlook.
And this is where things get really interesting. This handbag theory ties in with another controversial discovery, cocaine in ancient Egyptian mummies. This finding has fueled a heated debate about the possibility of transoceanic contact, long before conventionally accepted timelines.
Cocaine and mummies. Wow, that definitely challenges conventional historical narratives. What's the scientific community saying about this?
Well, the presence of cocaine, a substance native to South America, in Egyptian mummies, is a puzzle that needs more investigation. If it's validated, it could potentially overturn those established historical narratives, suggesting contact between continents long before we thought possible.
It's amazing how a single discovery can challenge our whole understanding of the past and force us to reconsider long-held beliefs and explore new possibilities.
And for our final stop on this leg of our deep dive, we're heading back to the U.S., to the Grand Canyon.
Okay, lead the way. What mysteries are hidden in that iconic landscape?
Get ready for this one. There's this persistent, though largely unsubstantiated, claim of an Egyptian temple hidden within a restricted area of the Grand Canyon.
The Egyptian Temple of the Grand Canyon. That's a bold claim. What's the story behind it? Is there any evidence?
This story is based mostly on one man's account. It describes a cave filled with Egyptian relics, like hieroglyphics and statues. But because it's a restricted area, it's hard to verify.
I can see why that would fuel speculation. The idea of an ancient Egyptian presence in North America is certainly intriguing, but without concrete evidence, it remains just that speculation.
Right, and the government secrecy surrounding it just adds to the mystery. It's like the delayed release of the JFK assassination documents. It fuels conspiracy theories and distrust of official narratives.
I get it. People are drawn to these mysteries. The unknown has a certain allure, especially when it's shrouded in secrecy. But it's important to separate speculation from actual evidence. Maybe one day the truth about this alleged Grand Canyon temple will come out. But until then, it's an enigma.
So that's the first leg of our journey. Through ancient mysteries and alternative theories, it seems like we've stumbled upon more questions than answers so far.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of exploration, isn't it? Each discovery, each unanswered question, fuels our curiosity, drives us to dig deeper, seeking a better understanding of our past and our place in the grand scheme of things.
Let's take a break here and continue this fascinating exploration in the next part of our deep dive.
That alleged Egyptian temple in the Grand Canyon. It's a fascinating story, but it really highlights the need for solid evidence. You know, when we're evaluating these extraordinary claims, it's easy to get caught up in the speculation, especially when we're dealing with topics that are shrouded in mystery.
Absolutely. Got to be careful not to jump to conclusions. Now, let's go back to that handbag symbol we were talking about, the one found in ancient artwork.
Oh yeah, the handbag.
Yep.
I'm really curious about Richard's interpretation of it, you know, as a symbol of astronomical knowledge and timekeeping. It implies a level of sophistication that we don't always associate with ancient cultures.
Yeah, Richards basically suggests that whoever possessed this handbag knowledge had like a key to understanding the universe, giving them an advantage in things like navigation, construction, even predicting celestial events.
That's interesting. But I'd be a little cautious about assigning such specific meanings to ancient symbols. Without more concrete evidence, symbolism can be subjective, you know, open to multiple interpretations. We should consider all the different perspectives before we draw any firm conclusions.
Good point. It's easy to get carried away trying to interpret those ancient symbols, especially when we're looking for connections. To support certain theories, context is crucial. We need more than just the presence of a symbol to really grasp its meaning.
Absolutely. Now, Rogan brought up this really interesting observation about technological disparity. Even in modern times, he mentioned a tribe in the Amazon rainforest that was recently discovered by his friend Paul Rosley, living a completely subsistence lifestyle, seemingly untouched by modern technology.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like a real-life example of how different groups of people can exist in totally different technological realities. Makes you wonder, if similar disparities existed in ancient times, like could there have been pockets of advanced civilizations alongside others that were still developing basic technologies?
It's definitely possible. Imagine if our civilization collapsed and only fragments of our technology survived. Future generations might find those fragments and interpret them in ways we never intended. Maybe that's what happened with ancient civilizations too.
Right. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. We get these glimpses of something extraordinary, but the full picture remains hidden. Now let's get back to those cocaine mummies in ancient Egypt. Further testing has actually confirmed the presence of cocaine, ruling out external contamination.
So that strengthens the case. For pre-Columbian contact between the Americas and Africa, if the Egyptians were getting cocaine from South America, what else might they have acquired? Were there other exchanges of knowledge, technology, even cultural practices?
It raises so many questions about those ancient civilizations and how they interacted. Were there established trade routes across the oceans? What kind of maritime technology did they have?
It's tempting to speculate, but we have to remember, those extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. The cocaine is intriguing, but we need more to fully support the idea of regular transoceanic contact back then.
Now remember that Clovis first theory we discussed earlier, the one that claimed the Clovis people were the first to inhabit the Americas, while it's being challenged more and more by discoveries like Monteverde that push back the timeline of human presence in the Americas.
The Clovis first debate is a great example of how scientific understanding is always evolving. New discoveries challenge those old theories, leading to revised timelines and a deeper understanding of the past. It reminds us that science isn't about clinging to dogma, but about constantly refining our knowledge as new evidence comes to light.
Exactly. We have to be open to new information and be willing to reconsider those long-held beliefs when new evidence emerges. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and explore another aspect of these ancient mysteries: the human tendency to see patterns and meaning, even where none may exist. Remember pareidolia?
Right, our brains are pattern-seeking machines.
Yeah, they're incredibly good at finding patterns, even in random data. It can be a great tool for creativity and problem solving, but it can also mislead us if we mistake random information for meaningful patterns.
It's a double-edged sword, I guess. Pareidolia can lead us down some dead ends, but it can also spark curiosity and lead to new discoveries. The key is to approach those patterns with a critical eye, test them against the evidence, and be willing to let go if they don't hold up.
So like with that handbag symbol, while Richard's interpretation of it as astronomical knowledge is interesting, we should be cautious about assigning specific meanings based solely on our current understanding. Maybe it meant something completely different to the people who created it.
I agree. We can't impose our modern perspectives on ancient cultures. We have to be aware of potential misinterpretations and acknowledge the limitations of our knowledge when we're dealing with the distant past.
So then, how do we reconcile the allure of these ancient mysteries with the need for rigorous scientific inquiry? How do we balance the excitement of exploration with the discipline of critical thinking?
It's a balancing act, a dance between open-mindedness and skepticism. We need to be open to new ideas and willing to challenge those established narratives, but we also need to demand evidence, test hypotheses, and avoid jumping to conclusions.
Right.
And maybe most importantly, we need to be willing to admit when we don't know something. The unknown shouldn't be feared, but embraced. It's the driving force behind exploration and discovery.
Well said. It's those unanswered questions, the mysteries that we can't quite grasp that keep us searching and learning. Okay, let's shift our focus now to a topic that's often intertwined. With these discussions of ancient mysteries, the possibility of ancient
Cataclysms, like massive floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, even asteroid impacts. These are the forces of nature that have shaped our planet and possibly even influenced the course of human history.
Exactly. And while we often think of these events as purely destructive, they can also be catalysts for change, shaping landscapes, ecosystems, and even civilizations.
Imagine an advanced ancient civilization, thriving and sophisticated, suddenly wiped out by a catastrophic event.
That's a sobering thought. Such an event can not only destroy structures and artifacts, but also entire populations, leaving behind only those scattered clues for us to try to decipher.
And those fragments, scattered and misinterpreted, could easily become the basis for myths and legends, obscuring the real history of those lost civilizations.
Which brings us back to that Younger Dryas impact theory, the one that suggests a comet or asteroid impact, around 12,000 years ago, caused major environmental upheaval, contributing to the extinction of megafauna, and potentially impacting early human society.
The evidence for that impact event is pretty compelling. There's that layer of black mat, containing nanodiamonds and other unusual materials, found at sites all over the world. If this theory is true, it could change our whole understanding of early human history and the challenges our ancestors faced.
The Younger Dryas impact theory, if proven, would add another layer of complexity to our understanding of ancient civilizations. Maybe some of those seemingly inexplicable advancements we see in ancient structures were actually a response to the need to rebuild and adapt after such a devastating event.
It's possible. It shows that even seemingly stable periods in Earth's history can be interrupted by those dramatic events that reshape the planet and its inhabitants.
These ancient cataclysms remind us that human history isn't a straight line, but a tapestry woven with threads of creation and destruction, resilience and adaptation. It encourages us to look deeper and consider those powerful forces that have shaped our world and the civilizations that came before us.
And it reminds us that we're not immune to the power of nature. We try to understand and control our environment, but ultimately, we're still subject to its whims.
Now let's talk about the role of skepticism in evaluating claims about these ancient mysteries.
Skepticism, when applied thoughtfully, is a valuable tool. It encourages us to question assumptions, demand evidence, and avoid jumping to conclusions based on speculation or wishful thinking.
But there's a fine line between healthy skepticism and outright dismissal. How do we find that balance between being critical of extraordinary claims while still being open to the possibility that some of these mysteries might actually hold some truth?
It's about using critical thinking without shutting down that sense of wonder and exploration. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, but that doesn't mean we should automatically dismiss anything that challenges conventional wisdom.
It's about approaching these mysteries with a discerning mind, evaluating the evidence, considering alternative explanations, and being willing to change our minds when presented with compelling information.
Exactly. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come from questioning the status quo and exploring those seemingly impossible ideas. Look at the theory of continental drift. It was initially ridiculed, but it revolutionized our understanding of geology and plate tectonics.
That's a great point. It shows that even those outlandish ideas can lead to major breakthroughs in our understanding of the natural world.
So when we're evaluating claims about ancient mysteries, we need a balanced perspective, questioning, scrutinizing, but still open to the possibility that our current understanding might be incomplete or even inaccurate.
Like that handbag symbol. Some see it as a sign of astronomical knowledge. Others might interpret it as a religious artifact, a representation of power, or something else entirely.
The way we interpret those ancient symbols is complex and often subjective. We have to be careful not to impose our modern understanding on the past and acknowledge that our interpretations can be influenced by our own cultural biases.
It's about approaching these interpretations with humility, recognizing that our understanding of ancient cultures is constantly evolving as we make new discoveries and challenge old assumptions.
And that's what makes this whole exploration so fascinating. It's a journey of discovery, piecing together those fragments of the past and acknowledging that our understanding of history is always a work in progress.
Let's take a pause here and explore the interplay of skepticism and belief in our next segment. Okay, so we've been going back and forth on this whole skepticism versus open-mindedness thing when it comes to these ancient mysteries.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Right. We can't just believe everything we hear.
Well,
But being completely closed off doesn't feel right either.
totally. And that brings us back to something Dan Richards said in his conversation with Joe Rogan. He suggested that when faced with these mysteries, the most powerful question isn't, is it true? But what if it is true?
That's an interesting way to look at it. Instead of just dismissing something as impossible, we entertain the hypothetical and see where it leads us.
Okay, so let's play that what if game. What if those cocaine mummies are actually evidence of ancient transatlantic voyages?
Well, that would completely change our understanding of ancient seafaring and global interaction. Imagine civilizations crossing the oceans, exchanging goods and ideas thousands of years earlier than we thought possible.
It would mean a much more interconnected ancient world than we ever imagined. And it would make you wonder, what else might have been exchanged? What knowledge or technologies were shared?
It would be a huge paradigm shift, forcing us to rethink the whole narrative of human history. We might have to reconsider the origins of certain technologies or cultural practices and acknowledge a much earlier globalization.
Okay, let's try another one. What if the Ark of the Covenant, with all its supposed powers, including the radiation, is really hidden away in that Ethiopian church?
Wow, that would be incredible. We'd be dealing with an object that's both sacred and potentially dangerous. It would blur the lines between faith, science, and history and spark endless debate.
Right. It would force us to reconsider. Those stories we often dismiss as just myths or legends. Maybe there's more truth to them than we realize.
It reminds us that we don't know everything. There might be forces out there that we haven't even begun to understand, both in the past and present.
One last what if. What if that square on Mars is actually evidence of an ancient Martian civilization?
Finding proof of extraterrestrial life, especially intelligent life that built structures, would be absolutely monumental. It would change everything we know about our place in the universe and make us question the uniqueness of human civilization.
It would spark a whole new wave of scientific exploration, with missions to Mars and beyond searching for more evidence.
It would capture the imagination of the entire world and inspire a new generation of explorers and scientists.
So after all of this, what's the main takeaway for our listeners? Why should they care about these ancient mysteries and alternative theories?
Because they remind us that learning is a journey, not a destination. They push us to question what we think we know, embrace the unknown, and stay curious about the world.
They remind us that history is not set in stone. It's constantly evolving as we make new discoveries and re-examine old assumptions.
And even if some of these theories turn out to be wrong, the process of exploring them, weighing the evidence, and considering different perspectives makes us think more critically and appreciate the complexities of the past.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with this question. What if even just one of these claims, the cocaine mummies, the Ark's radiation, the Mars square turns out to be true, how would that change your view of humanity's story and our place in the universe? Keep thinking about that as you continue your own explorations. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and never lose that sense of wonder.